She lent her last $10 to a stranger at the train station, not realizing he was a millionaire who would come back to transform her life. The train station was nearly deserted, shrouded in the murky mist of a chilly March drizzle. Puddles collected in the cracks of the platform, and the sky appeared to press down more with each passing second. Eva tightened her coat around her slim figure, her fingers burning from the cold. The job interview she was going to felt like a pipe dream, but it was all she had left. Her gaze shifted to the timetable board, then to the shredded ticket in her hands. She had barely enough time. Then came the voice. "Excuse me." The words were gentle and hesitant. She turned, surprised. A man stood a few steps away, the rain seeping into the shoulders of his flimsy jacket. His beard was long, his hair was plastered to his brow, and his eyes, blue, tired, and almost remorseful, stared straight into hers. "I'm sorry," he repeated, shivering. I had my wallet taken. I only need $10 for a ticket home. I swear I'll repay you if you can trust me. Please." Eva blinked. For a minute, neither of them moved. The only sounds were the distant hum of an oncoming train and the constant patter of rain on the metal roof. $10. This was all she had left. Her pocket had a single crumpled bill, the last of what left after paying for her ticket and a cup of instant coffee. She was saving $10 for a little dinner following the interview. $10 stood between her and complete emptiness. She could walk away. She should walk away. However, she didn't. She took a closer look at him. His lips trembled, and his hands were crimson with cold. However, it wasn't only his appearance. There was something in his eyes. There was no hostility or manipulation, only tiredness, grief, and possibly a tinge of shame. Eva paused, fingers curled around the bill in her coat pocket. "Is there anyone you can call?" she asked. He shakes his head. "The phone is dead. I tried to ask others. Nobody wanted to talk." "How can I know you aren't lying?" She pressed cautiously. "You don't," he admits. "But I swear I just want to go home. She should have gone away." But something in her, perhaps something that still remembered the version of herself from before her mother died, before everything came apart, murmured, "Help him." Without saying anything, she reached into her pocket and brought out the $20. Her hand hovered in the air for a time, her heart racing. This was ridiculous and absolutely irrational. She stared at him again and cautiously extended her hand. "I'm not sure why," she whispered softly, "but I believe you." He looked at her hand, unsure if it was real. Then he reached out almost reverently and accepted the bill. "I vow to pay you back," he murmured, his voice shaking. Eva attempted a slight smile. "Just get home safely." He opened his lips to add more, but the train pulled in, hissing as it came to a halt. The man nodded, turned quickly, and vanished among the passengers entering the train. Within seconds, he was gone. Eva stood frozen, the moist wind blowing across her cheeks. Her gut churned with uncertainty. That was it. Her last $10 are gone. She didn't even know his name. The loudspeaker announced the next departure. She checked the time again. Her train was next, her chance, and possibly her last. She hopped on board, water trickling down her coat sleeves, and sunk into a window seat. The rain blurred the glass, and the platform receded behind her. She didn't realize it at the time, but that simple act of generosity, giving away her last $10, was the catalyst for transformation in her life. Eva waited outside the office building where her interview was scheduled, heart thumping and hair damp from the drizzle. Her stomach grumbled, empty. She had skipped breakfast, not by choice, but because her wallet now contained only expired receipts and an old photo of her mother. She was 20 minutes late. The bus had asked for precise change, and she didn't have any. She tried walking, cutting through unfamiliar streets, but the city was huge and uncaring. By the time she arrived, the receptionist had given her a stiff, pitying smile. "I'm sorry, but the interviewer had another meeting." You will have to reschedule." Eva attempted to explain. She even offered to wait, but the woman had already gone back to her computer. She walked out of the building, her shoulders slumped and soaked socks squished into her shoes. The wind sliced through her clothing like paper. For a long time she merely stood on the sidewalk, staring at the passers-by. Busy, warm, and dry. Whether she was present or not, the world moved forward. When she returned to her modest rented room, which had a single bed, a shared bathroom, and a flickering corridor light, the owner was waiting outside. "The rent was due 3 days ago, Eva." "I know. I am trying. You mentioned that last week. I cannot keep making exceptions. Please give me until Friday. I have someone else who will take the room tomorrow." "I apologize." She did not fight it. "What's the point?" She stuffed the little belongings she had into a tattered backpack. 2 sets of clothes, a cracked phone with no service, and a dog-eared paperback that her mother used to read to her. She did not cry, not yet. That night she discovered a spot in downtown's 24-hour public library. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the air smelled of dust and old coffee, and the security guard gave her a suspicious look as she snuggled up in a chair behind the nonfiction shelves. The following night, he begged her to go. The benches in the park were not soft. They were metallic, frigid, and harsh. But the stars above remained silent, and the city, in an odd way, fell silent after midnight. She clutched her backpack to her chest and attempted to disappear. Each day faded into the next. She looked for a job, but had no address or phone number to provide. She spent her days going to libraries, shelters, and job centers. The word hope began to feel like a cruel joke, yet sometimes, in the midst of those long, hungry afternoons, she would recall his face, the man at the train station, his voice, and his eyes. That moment, he gazed at her as if she were the first person to see him, and she wondered whether she had been a fool. Was it foolish to give up her last $10? She had nothing now. No money, no place to sleep, no plan, no family, and still. Nonetheless, there was a peculiar kind of tranquility that persisted silently within that memory. She had helped and possibly saved someone. She had done the right thing, not because she had to, but because something within her told her it was important. However, the tranquility was fleeting, and the cold was overwhelming. One rainy evening, as she sat on the edge of a park bench, attempting to dry her socks with the last of the sunlight, a group of teens walked by. One of them threw an empty Coke can at her and laughed. "Get a job," he said under his breath. She did not look up. That night, she returned to the library, but the doors were shut. It was a holiday. She roamed the streets until almost midnight, then curled up in a bus shelter, protected from the wind but not the terror. That night, she cried. She cried silently, not with sobs, but with tears that flowed down her cheeks and vanished under her coat collar. She missed her mother's voice, laughter, and warmth. She missed feeling protected and known. Her stomach was empty, but the hollowness in her chest stung worse. The sun rose the next morning to find her still there, eyes puffy, hair matted, and heart crushed. She had reached rock bottom. There was nowhere to go lower, and she was still breathing. Eva met her on Tuesday morning. The park was abnormally quiet, with only the occasional jogger cutting through the remaining mist on the grass. Eva sat on her usual bench near the monument of a forgotten general, knees drawn to her chest, coat zipped all the way up, but it did little to keep the cold out of her bones. She hadn't eaten for almost 2 days. The discomfort in her stomach was dull, but persistent. She'd become accustomed to it, like the constant hum of a painful memory that you can't quite stop. She then observed the woman. She was elderly, possibly in her 70s, but her movements were beautiful. She had a wool shawl over her shoulders and held a small brown paper bag in her gloved hands. She moved with purpose, but as she approached the bench, she paused and stared at Eva. "You look hungry," the woman observed softly. Eva blinked, unsure whether she was being pitied or judged. "I'm okay," she said automatically. The woman sat down next her, smiling sweetly and gently. She put the paper bag on the bench between them and gently opened it. "Every morning, I bring an extra in case I come across someone who could use it." Inside was a sandwich made of large slices of bread that were slightly uneven but still fresh, with ham and cheese and a dab of mustard. Eva stared at it. She murmured, "I can't take that." "Why not?" the woman inquired. "Is your pride greater than your hunger?" Eva glanced away, humiliated. The woman waited quietly and calmly. Finally, Eva accepted the sandwich. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it. The initial bite stung her eyes. "Thank you," she replied, struggling to get the words out through the knot in her throat. The woman nodded. "A soup kitchen is located on Monroe Street, just a few blocks from here. They provide lunch, but they're constantly short on staff. You appear to be in need of a warm environment and a sense of purpose." Eva gazed at her. "Do you think they'll let me volunteer?" "Ask for Carol," the woman murmured as she stood. "Tell her that Ruth sent you." Then she walked away. Eva stared after her for a long time before looking down at the half-eaten sandwich in her lap. Later that day, she discovered the soup kitchen. The structure was modest, with a faded brick facade and a peeling sign that said Hope Table. Inside, the aroma of vegetable soup and baked bread welcomed her like an old friend. She asked for Carol. Carol appeared to be a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with rolled-up sleeves and a clipboard that seemed perpetually attached to her hand. Carol's face softened when Eva stated that Ruth had sent her. "Ruth has a keen eye for people who need a second opportunity," she claims. "Are you willing to work?" Eva nodded immediately. "Then get an apron." The initial several hours were a whirl of tasks. Chopping veggies, cleaning tables, and pouring soup into chipped bowls. Eva's hands worked without thought, but her mind was active. People came in, men and women of all ages, exhausted by life, but yet smiling and saying thank you. One man made jokes while waiting for his dinner. Another person offered to help sweep up after dining. A tiny girl with matted hair handed Eva an artwork composed of crayon and ripped notebook paper. It was of a flower. Eva's feet ached at the end of the day, but she felt more like herself than she had in weeks. Over the next few days, she kept returning, not for food, which they always supplied, but to assist. She peeled potatoes, folded napkins, and knew the regulars' names. She listened to stories of agony and tenacity, of individuals who had lost everything but continued to come up every day with hope in their eyes. Carol handed her a tiny envelope one evening after the last dish had finished drying. She said that it was only a small stipend. "You have earned it." Eva opened it. Later, $20. It was enough for a bus pass and a few days of stability. But more than that, it was the trust, the acknowledgement, the sensation that perhaps, just maybe, she wasn't invisible. She sat outside on the sidewalk, watching the sun set behind the roofs, turning the sky orange and gold. And for the first time in what seemed like forever, she didn't feel like she was falling. She was still impoverished, insecure, and alone in many respects. But she had discovered something. She clung to a glimmer of light amid the darkness with all she had. It was a peaceful Thursday afternoon at the soup kitchen. The lunch rush had just ended, and the air still smelled of tomato stew and warm cornbread. Eva was washing down the last of the tables, murmuring gently beneath her breath, when the bell above the entrance rang. She looked up. A man stepped inside. He wore a dark-fitted coat that was unusual in this section of town. His shoes were polished, and his hair was well combed back, but it wasn't his clothing that drew her in. That was his face. Her heartbeat skipped. There was something about his eyes. Blue, peaceful, and somehow familiar. He gazed about the room, not lost, but searching. And when his sight fell on her, he stopped for a second before his lips parted in the tiniest smile. Eva lowered the towel carefully, gazing. It couldn't be, but it happened. He proceeded steadily toward her, eventually halting just a few feet away. "Hello," he began, his voice warmer and more confident than she remembered. Eva blinked. "Do I know you?" He inclined his head, the same half-smile remaining on his lips. "You do," he continued, "or at least you once trusted me when no one else did," and everything clicked. The train station, the rain, a $10 cash, and you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He nodded. "I was a wreck that day, wet, cold, and desperate. You gave me your last $10. Eva's mind spun. She gazed at him again, this time intently. The scruffy stranger was gone. In his place stood someone sleek and poised, as if he belonged in a boardroom rather than a soup kitchen. "I never learned your name," she whispered softly. "David," he responded. She slowly repeated David Carter's name, as if to ground herself in reality. "I returned the next day," he said, "but you were gone. I checked the station and the ticket booth. Nobody knew who you were. I didn't even know your name. I didn't expect to see you again," she admitted. He grinned again, but quieter this time. "Neither did I, but I'll never forget your face." Eva folded her arms around her apron, still astonished. "Why are you here?" "I was passing through the area and saw the sign, so I decided to stop in. Something told me that I should." She wasn't certain she believed that. Nobody strolled into a soup kitchen in this section of town on a whim, let alone dressed like that. David gazed around the room. "Do you work here?" She explained that volunteering helps her stay afloat. He nodded attentively. "You helped me when I had nothing. I would like to return the favor." She shook her head slowly. "That was not why I handed you the money." "I understand," he continued. "And that is exactly why I want to." There was a prolonged hush. Then he moved closer, reaching into his coat. He took out his wallet, then hesitated. "I brought this," he explained, handing her a crisp $10 bill to repay you. Eva glanced at it, then chuckled quietly, not mockingly, but in surprise. She took the bill, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you," she replied. He wasn't finished. "More than that," he said. "I'd want to take you out to dinner, or at least for coffee. There is something about you that I have not forgotten." Eva returned her attention to him, after looking down at the dollar in her hand. Everything about this time felt unreal and impossible, like a scene from another person's life. She muttered, "You're not who I thought you were." He smiled. "No, I am not." She instantly realized something. Neither was she. They sat opposite from each other in a quiet corner of a neighboring cafe, complete with mismatched seats and calm jazz music playing in the background. Eva still wore her soup kitchen apron underneath her coat, and her hands were curled around the warm cup David had ordered. Chamomile tea with honey. She hadn't had anything so soothing in weeks. David cautiously mixed his coffee before looking at her. "You're probably wondering who I actually am." She gave a slight smile. "Okay, yeah." He reached into his coat and retrieved a sleek black business card. He slid it along the table. Eva hesitated before picking it up. "David Carter is the CEO of Nova Spark Technologies and the founder of the Carter Foundation." She looked at it, blinking. "Nova Spark? Is that your company?" David nodded. "I started it 10 years ago. We develop adaptive learning software and artificial intelligence solutions for education. It went off faster than I had imagined." Eva's mouth opened and then closed again. She had heard about Nova Spark. Everyone did. It had made headlines, with plaudits for transforming access to digital education in underfunded schools. She remembered reading about it once, when she still worked and had a couch to read on. But, that day at the station, you were... He smiled as he completed doing something stupid. "I'd been working on a project for our nonprofit organization, the Carter Foundation. One of our programs focuses on studying homelessness and developing better ways to help people who fall through the cracks. I wanted to see it for myself. So I went underground for 1 week. I don't have a wallet or an ID, only the clothing on my back. He leaned forward slightly. I had planned everything except getting my pocket picked on the first day. Ava laughed beneath her breath. So you were indeed stuck. I was, and everyone I approached ignored or dismissed me. He gazed at her, his expression softening. Everyone but you. She felt a flush build on her cheeks. You didn't know who I was. You did not ask for anything in return. You gave me everything you had and now disappeared. That stayed with me. Eva gazed down at her tea. I was not aiming to make an impression. I honestly believed I was being naive. You weren't, he insisted firmly. You were a person. You were kind. He hesitated for a time, considering his comments. I've met individuals with wealth, power, and influence, but in that moment, you shone more honesty than most of them ever will. That is why I have been searching for you. I'd want to make an offer to you if you're interested. Eva raised her eyes. What kind of something? David leaned back in his chair and spoke steadily. I'd like you to work with us at the foundation, rather than at NovaSpark. We have initiatives that aid folks like you, who were once young, striving, and overlooked. We support community-led projects, micro-entrepreneurship, and social innovation, and we seek people with a heart, people who understand it. She blinked, surprised. But I do not have a degree. I don't even have a permanent address. He smiled. We've hired people with MBAs and those who've lived in tents. What counts is your story, your perseverance, and your determination to serve people when you had nothing yourself. Eva sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. The weight of the previous few weeks finally caught up with her. All those nights on benches, starvation, rejection, and now this. Do you really mean this? She whispered. I wouldn't be here else. She gulped hard. What would I do? You would start by learning and training. We'll get you established somewhere secure and with support. Then you'd join one of our community teams, help shape programs, and maybe even lead them. Eva was silent for quite some time. The surroundings faded away, leaving only the warmth of the tea in her palms and a calm hope building in her chest. I don't know what to say, she whispered. He answered, yes, with a faint optimistic smile. Let's transform people's lives. Start with yours. She gazed at him, at the stranger she'd previously assisted without knowing anything about him, who was now seated in front of her like a door she never expected to open. Something deep inside began to alter, a belief that perhaps she wasn't meant to be lost. She took a breath. Okay, she replied. And at that point, her life began to change. Eva's first day at the Carter Foundation seemed like she had stepped into a foreign world, one she had previously only seen through glass. The headquarters was housed in a refurbished brick warehouse that was full of light, laughing, and the hum of collaboration. Young people bustled between workstations and whiteboards, and the walls were covered in tales, images, and statements from people whose lives had been altered by the Foundation's work. David introduced her to the team as someone who added value, rather than someone who needed support. That alone altered everything. He did not treat her as a charity case. He regarded her like a peer, someone whose insight the world required. Eva devoted the next few weeks to training. He learned about community planning, grant writing, and social project design. She shadowed coordinators in the field and visited youth shelters, food banks, and recovery programs. Slowly, the parts of her confidence that had been buried under doubt and tiredness began to come back together. Then came the time when David handed her a thin folder. He suggested that you conduct your own pilot project. Create something meaningful to you. We will support it. Eva opened the folder and discovered that her proposal had already been typed up. A mobile soup kitchen. A van that could travel between underserved communities, delivering hot meals, and human connection directly to those in need, much as she had once done. The vision had occurred to her during one of her final shifts at Hope Table. She remembered the nights spent sleeping on benches, the guilt of venturing into fixed-location shelters, and the terror of being discovered. What if they could get help instead? David believed in it, as did the board. The Carter Foundation funded the prototype. They assigned her to a small team and trusted her. The first time she saw the finished vehicle, painted sky blue with Open Hands Project inscribed in delicate letters over the side, she stood in the parking lot crying. Her first night driving the van, she went to a park she was familiar with, where she had previously slept beneath a cracked statue. That evening, she served over 100 meals. But she offered more than food: stories, embraces, and names remembered. She listened. And as word spread, her program expanded. In the quiet times between route planning and vegetable chopping, Eva noticed a difference in David. Not simply as the man from the train station or the CEO who had changed her life, but as a person of quiet, steadfast kindness. He never boasted or reminded her of her past. He simply showed up with encouragement, laughter, and coffee when she was too tired to talk. Their relationship grew in delicate, wordless ways. A late walk after a neighborhood gathering, and a shared laugh over a burned batch of cookies in the test kitchen. He listened like few others have. She trusted him unconsciously. One Saturday afternoon, while Eva was finishing up a community luncheon, she observed a familiar person sitting on a bench beneath the trees. Ruth, the old woman, had handed her a lunch during one of her saddest days. Eva hurried over. "I have thought about you every day since. You saved me." Ruth smiled softly. "All I did was feed a hungry girl." They sat together and caught up, as long-lost friends do. Ruth chuckled and patted Eva's hand. "I hoped you could find your way to David." Eva blinked. "Wait, do you know him?" "I should," Ruth answered with a cheeky twinkle in her eye. "He's my son." The globe slanted slightly. "Did you send me to Carol? You were fully aware of what you were doing." Ruth nodded. "David told me about a girl who gave him $10 when he had none. I needed to meet her. When I did, I saw everything he saw. Someone with a heart too huge to be overlooked." Eva sat there, astonished. "All the time." "Isn't it funny?" Ruth said. "How one simple act of kindness can have far-reaching consequences that neither of you could have anticipated." Eva sat beside David on the Foundation's rooftop terrace that night, the city lights shimmering like distant stars underneath her. She told him everything. About Ruth, about the sandwich. She realized that their paths had been connected long before either of them knew. David listened and stretched for her hand. "I used to believe fate was just a happenstance that we gave meaning to," he explained. "But meeting you altered things." Eva gazed at him deeply, and for the first time she allowed herself to believe in something bigger. That her pain may not have been in vain. Perhaps every restless night, loss and tear had brought her here, to have a purpose, to love, to the future. Everything seemed to come together at that point. Rain-soaked train station, the lunch at the park, the soup kitchen. The blue vehicle travels through forgotten streets. Everything has been leading up to this. To her, becoming. When David mentioned it, the city was bustling with early spring excitement. They were going through a communal garden in the center of downtown, where the Open Hands Project had just collaborated with a local shelter to provide meals and job training. Children laughed as they chased each other over the rows of budding vegetables. Volunteers talked over wheelbarrows of soil. David had remained quiet all afternoon. His eyes reflected a certain thoughtfulness. As they approached the far corner of the yard, beneath the arching branches of a blooming magnolia tree, he spoke. "Eva? I've been given a fresh opportunity," he explained gently. "We are opening a satellite office in New York. The foundation is expanding, and they are looking for someone to oversee the urban outreach effort." She glanced at him, Her heart paused in mid-beat. You? He nodded. They asked me to accept it, but I refused to go without offering you the same offer. Her breath caught. Do you want me to go with you? He claimed he wanted to help lead the next chapter of Open Hands. We'd be able to reach more individuals and build on what you've already started. Together. Ava did not respond soon away. She looked around. The garden. The people. The sun is dipping just beneath the rooftops. Her gaze focused on a young woman, assisting an elderly guy in sorting seed packages. Ava had met someone during her second week of volunteering, when she still didn't know where she belonged. This is the place, the city. It had gotten her through the toughest times in her life. It had watched her fall, and then showed her how to get up. I don't know, she finally said. I am quite pleased with what we are creating here. Who are these people? They were the first to believe in me, to make room for me. David nodded, not disappointed but understanding. I suspected you might feel that way. She swiftly added, I'm not saying no. I just feel like I should keep sowing roots here for a little longer. There is still work to do. He grinned and spoke softly. This is why I admire you. They sat on a nearby bench, letting the silence fill the gaps between their thoughts. Eva responded, I guess this is where the road splits. Maybe, David said, but just geographically. She turned to him, her gaze probing. Do you believe we can make that work? I believe we already have, he replied. You and I. We are bound not only by place, but also by our beliefs, what we have gone through, and we will continue to develop, perhaps in other cities, but always united in some way. She smiled, little sad but deeply confident. You're going to accomplish fantastic things there. So are you, he said. They came up with a plan. David would relocate to New York in the fall. Eva would continue to lead the Open Hands project in the city they both adored. They would stay in touch via weekly calls, collaborative initiatives, trips, and late-night texts loaded with updates and dreams. Their tale was not coming to an end. Rather, it was evolving. And as they stood beneath the blooming tree, the wind sweeping petals into the air around them, Eva knew one thing with certainty. She was not going to lose him. They were simply planting seedlings on different soils. 1 year later, the city had changed, or rather, Eva's perspective had shifted. The streets no longer resembled a maze of misery. They were full of purpose, possibility, and optimism. The Open Hands project had developed well beyond her expectations. With increased routes, a volunteer network, and a rotating cooking team, the mobile units currently serve more than 2,000 meals per week. They didn't only serve food, it represented dignity, discourse, and human connection. The national press had learned about the program, and she flew to Washington, D.C. last month to accept a national award on behalf of the team for innovative community outreach. As she stood at the platform, lights flashed and cameras clicked. She remembered the bench she used to call home, the food from a stranger, and the $10 she thought she'd lost forever. She was now the director of a full-service homeless support center, complete with showers, job training, mental health facilities, and art therapy rooms. The same hands that had previously trembling with anxiety now held keys to a location where people could start over. And every morning, she began her day in the kitchen, pulling on an apron and greeting the early guests by name. The team arranged a ceremony to commemorate the center's foundation anniversary. There were balloons, a banner saying 1 year of Open Hands, and dozens of photos strung on a clothesline, chronicling moments of meals shared, lives transformed, and smiles earned. Ava arrived late, having met with local authorities to discuss expanding their grant funding. She stepped into the hall, heart full and eyes scanning the room. Then she noticed David. He stood at the serving table, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers and something else in his pocket. His gaze fixed on hers, and the room fell silent. He crossed the room carefully and smiled. He appeared older, smarter, and more at ease than she had ever seen him. "Hello," he replied softly. She laughed despite the immediate burning of tears. "You came back. I promised you I would." The room fell silent, as if feeling something more than a reunion. David reached into his jacket and took out a little velvet box. But before opening it, he pulled out a crisp $10 bill, unfolded and untouched. He said, "I've been carrying this with me for a year, not because I needed to repay you, but because I wanted to remember the moment when everything changed." He opened the box. Inside was a simple yet lovely ring. "You offered me something no amount of money could buy. Faith. Allow me to spend the rest of my life demonstrating you were correct, even though I had nothing to show." The room held its breath. Eva looked at him, dumbfounded. She didn't try to hold back her emotions anymore. She remembered the girl she had been, lost and tired, clutching a crumpled banknote in the rain. She thought of the man she had trusted, not realizing he would be the one to reconstruct her world. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The clapping erupted around them, but Emmeline did not hear it. All she could feel was the warmth of his palm in hers, the pounding of her heart, and the calm truth that had gotten her this far. Later, as they stood beneath the string lights, watching the folks they had assisted dance, laugh, and recapture their joy, Eva clutched the $10 cash in her hands one final time. She smiled. "A little compassion," she remarked aloud, "can be the start of a miracle." Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of hope, kindness, and second chances. Eva's tale serves as a strong reminder that even the simplest act of compassion, such as a single $10, can have far-reaching consequences and transform people's lives in unexpected ways. If this story touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to Spirit-Stirring Stories for more true life stories that inspire, heal, and awaken the spirit. We believe in the power of narrative to bring light into the darkest corners, and your presence here means everything to us. Until next time, be nice, hopeful, and remember that your story is important too.